want to talk a little bit about the arrogance of some elites and the way in which certain members of Congress, certain political leaders in this country, are approaching the current crisis and the push to reopen. Yesterday, there was a hearing in the United States Senate, one of their committees. Jerome Powell, chairman of the Federal Reserve, and Steve Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary, both testified about their views on where the economy is at right now. And in cut one, Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio questioned Mnuchin, again, Treasury Secretary, about treatment of essential workers. Take a look at this.
The people who are the we call the essential workers, and we call out and thank, those essential workers are often the lowest paid workers. They do the laundry, they're the custodians, the security people. They prepare our food, they put their lives on the line for very low wages, and they're still worried about they're paying the bills. Is that fair?
Well, Mr. Senator, I just want to thank all the essential workers, whether it be the healthcare people, the
thanking is great, but these are people. Is it fair that our economy pays the essential workers so little in such work conditions?
Mr. Senator, some of those people are paid less than others. Again,
my question is that fair?
Again, Mr. Senator, I don't know what specific workers you're referring to.
I can lay them all out.
Is it fair that so-called essential workers are paid less by the economy? Now, I think Mnuchin was actually right to specifically say what are the essential workers you're talking about. In fact, this idea of essential workers is so subjective in state after state after state that it has just become a talking point. Politicians have made their own decisions on what qualifies as essential. I like when we did our intro for Mark Cuban last week, we had the guy ask how they determine who's essential, and he says, I don't know, rock, paper, scissors, mask. Sometimes it seems that way, that politicians have made the decision on essential workers, sometimes based on political whims, and then you have a guy like Sherrod Brown of Ohio use essential workers as a political football, not being specific, but vaguely saying, do you think essential workers are being paid less? But here's the other implication from what Sherrod Brown is saying, and that is it shows how much of an absence of understanding he has that there are people across this country who are not considered essential, but would like to be considered essential, would like to be going back to work, would like to be participating in the economy once again. It is politicians that created this sort of class of essential workers. So those are the only people that can go to work. Continue to this day in many states where it's just essential workers that are able to go into work. And he acts like they should be treated with some sort of special treatment in all sorts of different places, different businesses, because they're somehow deemed by politicians as essential. Therefore, they should get some sort of a special status and special recognition in a way that Sherrod Brown's giving. Now, make no mistake, it is something that grocery store workers and healthcare workers and everybody else has been getting out there amidst this pandemic and taking risks. Make no mistake about that. I'm with you there. But at the same time, at this point, while there are people across the country clamoring to get back to work, small business owners who are losing their businesses that they've done everything to build up, and Sherrod Brown has the audacity to say, well, it's just these essential workers that they've classified because other people are not considered essential based on those politicians' understanding, based on those politicians' decrees of who's essential and who's not essential. And so while he's making a big deal that, oh my gosh, there are these essential workers who have no choice but to go to work, and then there are people who are like, I have no choice but to stay home lest I get fined or locked up in jail because of the all-knowing, all-powerful elites like Sherrod Brown and Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. Do you follow what I'm saying here? He's created this class of essential workers, said they're the ones who somehow need to be treated differently because politicians decreed it as such. But he's ignoring the fact that there are a lot of people who would give anything to be part of that essential worker class created by the government and denied the ability to return to work. Now, there's one more cut 2, of Sherrod Brown and Steve Mnuchin that I want to get to, where he blasts Mnuchin, presenting the argument we should not be reopening yet.
The administration is willing to send people to work without regard for their safety, but the administration's unwilling to make sure these trillions of dollars in taxpayer money will help these workers directly. Secretary Mnuchin, let me go somewhere else. Public health experts have told us it's not safe to reopen the economy until we have worker protections in place that will control the spread of COVID. Things like testing, contract tracing, protective equipment, efforts that the president has clearly failed to lead to help our country. Secretary Mnuchin, you said there's considerable risk of not reopening, that keeping some businesses closed could cause permanent economic damage. How many workers will die if we send people back to work without the protections they need, Mr. Secretary?
Mr. Senator, we don't intend to send anybody back to work without the protections. And I would say I was prepared to come there today. I thought it was safe to testify. Matter of fact, I already was at the Senate this morning wearing a mask. And I assure you, both myself and everybody on the task force, the vice president and others, are following the best medical advice. And I couldn't be more proud of the medical advice that we're getting and the way the economy is opening up in a safe way.
So how many workers should give their lives to increase our GDP by 0.5%? That you're pushing people back into the workplace. There's been no national program to provide worker safety. The president says reopen slaughterhouses, nothing about slowing the line down, nothing about getting protective equipment. Is how many workers should give their lives to increase the GDP or the Dow Jones by 1,000 points?
You know, workers should give their lives to do that, Mr. Senator, and I think your characterization is unfair.
Unfair? Steve Mnuchin's putting it much too nicely. Now, of course, he was in a Senate hearing, so fair enough that he needs to just use unfair. I would say his characterization is utterly disgusting. Not just an example of the audacity of a politician who won't accept that there are millions of Americans out there who can't make ends meet and don't trust the government to fill the need, fill the void, and don't want to trust the government to fill the void. But even more than that, how many workers will die, he says? How many workers should give their lives for 0.5% increase in GDP? First of all, GDP is irrelevant. Who gives a damn about GDP? It's a false metric of the economy and economic growth anyway. It's not a good one. We talked about that a bit yesterday with John Tamney. I care about people being able to live their lives, save their livelihoods, save their small businesses. It's not an either or, like Brown is suggesting it is. That one person will have to give up their lives so that other people will get to go about their business, so that we can reopen. And by the way, also, he's implying that Trump would be wanting workers to be forced to go back to work, businesses to be forced to reopen. There is absolutely nothing whatsoever that says any business needs to reopen or any workers need to go back to work. It's just about opening up the opportunity to do so once again. But the way in which Brown approached that question was utterly horrendous. And it is an exemplification of the attitude we're seeing in far too many of these circumstances. Thanks for watching this clip of Jimmy at the Crossroads. Don't miss more engaging, intelligent talk. Subscribe today to the Jimmy at the Crossroads YouTube channel. You do not want to miss our live show. Thanks for your support.
I got Jimmy at the crossroads, making sense out of no sense. Yeah.